Good morning. It's an honor to be able to be here before you. And I would like to thank Vacacela for the opportunity of giving you this talk. I imagine that some attendees had not managed to arrive because of the taxi strike, logistical problems. So perhaps we may see many people coming in during my talk. So I'll ask you to please let them sit next to you if the chair next to you is empty. So I have to talk about applied technology, talking about assistance in the sales strategy for life insurance. And I would like to make this talk a little bit more interactive. It's still very early in the morning, and we tend to still be a little not very motivated, let's say, to following a talk, especially regarding technology. So one of the first questions that I was asking myself when looking at the topic of the presentation was whether human beings have a natural tendency towards technology, an innate thing. This is one of the questions that could really start this presentation. So I would like to ask you, just to sort of break the ice, what do you think? Do you think that technology is a natural thing in us, or is this something that we just invented in the last 100 or 50 years? Can you help me, give me a show of hands if you think that it's just part of human beings, technology? Well, half of the room, less than half of the room, I think. And this would mean then that the other half, I assume, thinks that does not agree with technology being part of human beings, and that is something that we invented. So let's try to illustrate this example or this position or these thinking. This was issued more than 100 years ago by a writer from Scotland, and I will write it, and it says, man is an animal that uses tools. Without tools, he's nothing. With tools, he's everything. By saying he's everything, I don't know, it must be in 50 size font and in bold. It means that this is the big change, the big difference between just being one more species of all the species that exist on Earth and what a human being really is. Then the next thought reflects what human beings have been doing in the last 200 years. But it's not just in the last 200 years. Man is the only living being that has the capability to create tools, to create new tools. What does this mean? It means that man has the ability to create components, and those components are used in turn to create other components or other pieces that when put together, incredible things come up. So this is one of the capabilities of human beings. And from my point of view, it's something that is innate. It's the only living creature that has this ability. Now, let me mention some of the concepts that could define technology. Originally, technology was conceived formally, I would say, originally in the ancient Greek times through arts and crafts. These people that performed those activities gradually specialized more and more. Then these type of activities were shaped better, became more relevant, And it concentrated mostly in modern Europe. So universities and education centers appeared where we started to see the development of different concepts and of science. At that level, they still didn't have the ability to prove it, but gradually they developed the ability to put or apply that knowledge that they had acquired. And the next concept is where I feel that we see the importance of what technology means today. So technology is described as the intended intervention designed and planned through activities and through which results, technological results, are generated that have an impact on the world. That's what we are. All the new technological designs, sooner or later, will have an impact on our lives. So that's the state at which we are today. And technological results, this is our next point, and this is our function, our role as people that are providing technology. Well, it allows us to develop human capabilities and improve the levels of possibilities. I'm going to mention now some characteristics that we frequently find when talking about technology. One, it is necessary and unavoidable. Well, perhaps it's not very difficult to accept this concept, that it's omnipresent, it is available everywhere. We don't really have to look for it. Technology comes to us. Now, another characteristic, it is very specialized, it is grouped in knowledge societies, it is integrated, interrelated, and it is beneficial. Here, perhaps many of you could argue that not in all cases technology is beneficial or advantageous. And there could be cases where, in fact, that may be true. For instance, pollution. There's a lot of technology that generates a lot of pollution. That it is complex and complicated. Well, I don't know if we have to make a difference here. Complex in that it has a lot of components, and complicated in that it is intricate. So that's basically the difference. And another important topic is, or another characteristic is that it is innovative. And because it is innovative, it changes a lot. And because it changes a lot, it can easily discontinue or become obsolete. And the other important trait is that it is costly. It is frequently associated to costs. So far, the characteristics, the basic characteristics of technology, but we still haven't shown one of the most important ones, which is that technology is relevant. That today, it's the differentiating element between individuals and organizations that own or have the control and the ones that don't, the others. So next, in order to make this more interactive, I would like to present the list of the most important, most transcendental inventions in mankind. And I would like to ask for your cooperation to help me organize this list a little. Which would you say, out of all the most important inventions, number one? The internet. Before that, the wheel. Okay, and before the wheel? The first fundamental invention of mankind has been language, the facility with which human beings created different forms of communication. The next one would be the wheel, as you mentioned already. And the next one would be what? The nails. In prehistoric times, do you remember the benefit of nails? How were they helpful? Yes? Together, yes? What else? One of the most important applications that nails had were for food. You know, the different pieces of meat that they were hunting for, putting them up high on the trees so that predators would not get away with them. Or, you know, that was the initial use of nails. Then the compass in China. And then the next one? Okay, the print, the electric bulb, engines. Okay, the telephone, then the incandescent bulb, as you mentioned already, and then next, penicillin, contraceptives, and finally the internet, as you mentioned. Now, I'm asking, is there any relationship between these breakthroughs, between these inventions? Is there any common factor that you may be aware of? What would you say? Innovation. A way to classify this is in two major categories. One group that allows for interaction, information, communication, data exchange, information exchange, or the exchange of ideas. And then in the other one, the category is productivity. How to improve human productivity. And in fact, the bulb, the incandescent bulb, was one of the first ones that really managed to do that by offering more hours of visibility for the plants. So those are the two major categories that I'm presenting here for these inventions. But as we can see, man has been capable of creating simple elements going from nails all the way to more sophisticated ones, like the space station that perhaps is the most important invention right now created by man. And as I mentioned a moment ago, one of the characteristics of technology is that societies or groups of knowledge have been created. And this technology has made it possible to create... Oh, it's gone. I'm sorry. Technology fails sometimes. When people got together, they created technology and they grouped together in companies. And here is one of the lists of technology companies, the most important ones that we've seen in the world. And we can mention several of them of great reputation, like have been part of history, like Kodak, for instance. And from that list that you see there, is there any characteristic that you see or could identify between them? They didn't change. They didn't do anything different. The other is that all these companies at their time were leaders. They were number one for many years or decades. Kodak for 100 years, IBM for 70 years, and so forth and so on, each one of them for decades. But as you said, from that list, all these companies that we see there, somehow they lost their leadership. And the question would be then, why did that happen? They were slow in adapting to changes and lack of vision to foresee the future. So that's one of the important points that I wanted to underline to begin the presentation as a basis for what I'll be trying to present next. And perhaps we could say that the companies that appeared on that list a moment ago did not read this statement by Darwin, this was more than 100 years ago, that said, of the species, the strongest one is not the one that survives. It's not the more intelligent that survives. It's the one that best adapts to change. So, as the objectives of my talk, let me introduce the different concepts. I will talk about productivity, knowledge as the exchange of information and experiences, and these two elements would allow us to help in our function in sales. So let me begin by talking about productivity. I think that everyone could easily say that producing or productivity means producing with the least amount of resources possible. But the question is that as far as it goes? Is that complete, this definition, or are we missing something? Okay, maintaining quality. In relation to an organization, well, forms of improving our productivity by optimizing internal and external communication, increasing the organization's capability, emphasizing information security and protection. How much are we doing in our organization to develop security, information security? For instance, as product managers in the life insurance product I can think of, to what extent or are we on top of the information or of protecting the information that we have for our clients? How much is encrypted in the databases of our corporate servers? And then we would have this question, is the business or are the business people empowered to be aware of what is being done by our IT providers in order to protect our information? And regarding backup of the information, there was a famous case of one of the technology companies that provides support or manages projects in application development. They had this case where they did not have the right procedures for backing up information, and they lost an important part of their database. Today, this could be considered as something that cannot be accepted. It's unacceptable, but it still happens. Eliminating repetitive manual tasks. We've all been talking about this topic, but in reality, in our organizations, we continue doing that. The other important topic is service availability. I'm sure that in insurance companies, this topic is not really impacting much. We don't really look at it much, different from financial institutions where service availability is notorious. An agency that is outside the service or off service makes a difference, makes an impact.
But as regards customer experience, we are talking now about online underwriting. It is something that will be done directly by using technological tools. So availability of service is a key factor. Adaptation of new technologies is another important topic. Most organizations are open to adopting technology, but when the time comes, they find many difficulties in doing so. So I would like to ask you to make comments on the main difficulties that you have found when adopting new technologies. Huh? One thing could be adapting equipment, also providing equipment to users, or errors that may be made when using the new technology. Would you like to make any additional comments? Yes, reluctance to change. That is very important. Why are people against change? Because they don't find any benefits in changing, or why? Any other reasons? Very well. They are reluctant to change the way in which they've been doing things. They are in their comfort areas and they don't want to leave it. And what can we do about that? Well, I guess to first offer and speak about the new advantages of adopting the new technology. Another key factor that should be highlighted when talking about productivity has to do with the fact that the new technologies to be applied should be technologies that are independent from providers or platforms. What I mean is that the new technologies should not be tied to a new set of equipment or to a given provider or vendor. Or the opposite, they should be usable regardless of the brand of the equipment or the vendor. Also important is to highlight that technologies should be modular and scalable and accessible. This means that they should not be too expensive. It should be easy to introduce the new technology in an organization. It should be affordable, and it should be modular and introduced in an organization module by module and scalable so that it can grow in the future with not much complexities. Well, I have mentioned some elements of competitiveness, he corrects, of productivity, but now I would like to move on to the second element, which has to do with knowledge. Another way to improve our management capabilities has to do with increasing reliability or confidence and competitiveness. We can do this by increasing the knowledge we have about the products and services we offer. It can also be done by clearly understanding the needs and challenges of our clients and potential customers. Also, we have to offer solutions to their challenges. We have to start by increasing knowledge. So, what are the needs that our customer needs to solve? What are the products and services that we can offer as solutions to their needs? What is the market where our client or customer operates? What are the regulations in the industry where we work? The insurance sector is highly regulated worldwide. Because of this, we have to be strongly acquainted with the regulations in the industry as well as all the stakeholders involved in the process of development and sale of insurance products. That is key. Another important element has to do with our companies or your company. How much does the sales force know about your company? How much does the sales force know about the competition? Are you competitive vis-a-vis the competitors? Then the question is what to do in order to improve our knowledge. Let me share with you some strategies. To adopt the concept of fluency as regards sales knowledge. I'm going to explain what this means. Well, the idea here is to build a database of knowledge, an updated and current database. Updated as regards the content, which always changes, and current because it has to be something which is being used at the present time. And what about the form or shape of this database? It is not the same to have information available on paper that on electronic means. And it is not the same to have the information available in an electronic format or in a tablet format. So these elements are to be considered as well. And when I said fluency in knowledge, I mean to train the sales force to manage these concepts. They have to be fluent in knowledge. So, tell me about your ideas about this. What are you doing in this regard? Are you training your sales force? Well, I think one of the strategies possible is to hold briefing meetings on a regular basis with your sales force. And of course, I assume you're doing that. And in those briefings or short meetings, we should ask ourselves, how much are we contributing to our knowledge database? Another strategy that we could put in place, and I guess somehow we are all doing this, is to use tools to improve customer relationships management. So with these tools, CRM tools, we capture customer data about customers, prospects. We also are able to filtrate opportunities and also manage our agendas. In many of your organizations, I'm sure you have adopted these solutions to manage your customers, CRM tools. So my question would be, what are the main problems that you have encountered in adopting these solutions? Technologically wise or user wise? Could you say that again? Yes, quality of information. Definitely. It's a very key element to consider. Now, in these systems, a common problem is to keep the system current, because that is very time demanding. Of course, having an updated system gives you benefits, but it's also time consuming. Many organizations are using this concept, but I don't have time here to elaborate on this. Here I have other aspects or elements that would help to gain more knowledge about the market. I'm going to only refer to the sales system metrics. My question, how easily is your sales force giving you information about the sales? And I'm going to refer to a common case that illustrates the lack of information that we have. Usually, sales systems provide you information about sales achieved or made. But I ask, most of the systems that they are using, do they also provide information about the cases whereby no sales were gained or obtained? In other words, no sales cases? If that is the case, then I think you are very well aware of that, because we have found situations where only information about the sales made are provided, but no pre-sales conditions or post-sales conditions, because we truly also need to know what is happening, why are sales not being made. Let me refer now to some tools that, in my opinion, could help a great deal in increasing productivity. I'm going to refer to specific cases now. To produce content. This is an increasingly important aspect in many organizations. Content, as illustrated here, should be easy, flexible, and controllable. So not only the organization will create content for its officers. I think officers by themselves should also be able to generate information. For instance, take sales agents, so that information will not be only one-way information. If it is a one-way information, officers or sales agents then think that it's a burden, that this information adds no value. So, in my view, it is very important that individuals be empowered to create content. Then I would ask you, within organizations, well, by the way, within organizations, if I may the questions, I find that as regards logistics, sometimes things are very strict. So if I move away from the microphone, the translator will lose me. So I have to stick to the microphone. Well, he's moving away. How many So within the organizations, I have a question. How many of you are capable of creating your own knowledge database, an internal database for yourselves? Are you doing it? I will insist. Could you raise your hands if you are doing a database? Are you creating or developing your own database on a weekly basis, monthly basis, just for personal productivity reasons? Okay, another question. How do you do that? For instance, how do you do it? What tools are you using? Perfect. Anybody else? And do you do it at corporate level or personally? At personal level. What I mean is, would you have information related to your position or role as it relates to the organization, or can you include also, let's say, professional development information? Well, only or not many organizations are following this trend of developing individual databases. If those databases are developed, then they can be used at corporate level. And now, talking about corporate database concepts, how easy is it to share that information with other organizations? For instance, if you have an affiliate, could you share the information with your affiliate? Also, in connection with productivity, I think it is important to say that information should be well organized, should be structured, and should be used to manage shared information with a number of users and according to levels of access. Now, for time reasons, I'm going to move quicker now. Also, in connection with productivity, I think there is an issue which has to do with the reduction in the use of emails. A reason why organizations sometimes have internal conflicts is that they are using the email in an appropriate manner. Are there any alternative tools other than email? Well, this has to do with chat management, for instance, issues. Those tools help a great deal. So my question, out of the organizations represented here, any of you are including the possibility that the corporate officers use chats to replace the use of email? Okay, what are you using? A link. Yes, that is a popular tool for this type of communication. Skype could be another choice. Well, so we welcome those technologies. Well, to end with the topic of productivity, I'd like to share with you an example, a very specific one. Oftentimes, we try to develop generic tools that would be reusable. This is an example, by the way, of a solution which is being offered to a number of vendors. It is the same application, but it is highly versatile. It may be used by a number of vendors who would use their own marketing, branding, their own logo. They would customize the application. But to do these things are not that easy. You have to plan for this, you have to design it, and you have to have a budget. You also need to allocate some time to the task and also implement a level of coordination effort. I'd like to refer now to selling in the 21st century. I'm going to refer to the most important aspects, which are the following. And I would like to start with this model: configure, price, and quote. That's the CPQ model. Configure, price, quote. The basic concept. And then we have a self-service deployment strategy. First, I'll refer to the CPQ model. It is not a new model. It became popular because it was used by automobile selling companies for many years. So it's been with us for more than 25 years now. So they eliminated the channel concept. And the idea is that users would have the quote of what they wanted in a direct manner. As to life insurance, is it possible to do something like this? We think it is. It is possible. And here we have the requirements to be met by a version of this application that should be adapted to life insurance. The most important elements are: you should be able to define the products based upon a number of parameters, even if they are simple or complex products. You should be able to show comparative tables about products. And also, of course, you should show forecasts in graph and tables. And also, you should be able to generate professional reports. That is a very important aspect. I'm going to show you some examples. It's hard to read, but the idea is to show you that, for instance, the options available for a given product, such as Universal Life, are options that would apply to only that product, and they would be different to options for another type of product. Validation would be done directly within the quote processing module. So I can use comparative tables, and also I should be able to generate professional reports. A key aspect in sales is delivering what you deliver to your customer. I think being able to deliver is a demonstration of professionalism. Another aspect is the sales self-service environment. This environment for sales self-service is intended to issue policies on the fly, let's say. Of course, very specific policies. This is going to be a very well-defined product. And in addition to creating demand and image, it would allow me to create prospects for new products. Here I have a flow chart for the instantaneous emission or issuance of a policy. For time reasons, I will not describe the whole flow diagram. Well, this is an example just to help you validate this option. If you ever have the plan to implement a tool like this. I will not go into details on this slide, but the main idea is that in the coming years, many of the changes that we are starting to see now will become a reality. Something that has caught my attention particularly is the fact that within a few years, the virtual agents serving customers will be able to identify customers based upon their voice or face. So the customer service schemes will dramatically change in the coming years. I will not say much about this innovating products because you have heard presentations about this already, and other speakers will speak about this as well. But in the next years, we will need to develop new products. Now my question is, out of those potential new products that we might create, are we still capable, or are we now capable to think about what those products should be? And to conclude, I'd like to refer now to how to improve the sales cycle in life insurance. This is the life cycle for life insurance. There are two ways to visualize or tackle this concept. First, we have relationships-based sales. The customer interview plays a role. It is more, it's an activity that takes time, that allows us to know more about the customer. Then, a key aspect is that the agent should have access to the information he needs, and if so, the interview could be shortened. But the fact is that not always agents have access to that information, and not always they do develop a very sound relationship with the customer. Then on the right side of the chart, you have now knowledge-based sales. The closing process will take longer. It will be a more complex process. And let's see the reasons why. Out of all these items, I would say that the most important problem we have in our organizations is that there is disengagement by the agent and the customer. They lose interest. And last but not least, here I have this slide. Just to comment on the stages organizations have to go through. You as an organization, where are you on this ladder? Where are you now? Are you trying to improve your positioning? Are you trying to stay current? Are you innovating? Or are you generating disruption? Well, it's an answer that you will give to yourselves. And with this, I hope I have brought up some elements to allow you as an organization to rethink about the options available for the future and the tools for the future. And hopefully with this you'll be able to better select the tools or technologies that you will be using in the coming years. And now I think we have some room for questions. Are there any questions? At this point, if you want to make a question, please give me a show of hands, and the hostess will pass the microphone to you. So the floor is open for questions.
Hagan un favor, estaba mirando la penúltima cuestión de un sitio donde la entrevista con
I was looking at the next to last slide where you have an interview with the client and then a proposition, and then you alluded to a second sale. What are you referring to there? Well, that's really the second sale. In fact, it happens a lot. In certain types of life insurance segments, for instance, where the agent goes and offers or makes an offer for a term policy that could be a very simple thing. And as a result of that sale, he will possibly have the ability to sell a second product, a more complicated, more sophisticated one, more important. And he will generate referrals, perhaps also. He may have a reference there to sell another service or product to a relative or to a friend. So that's the importance of the second sale. You mentioned when you show the ideal pyramid in the sales cycle, a concentration in the interview with a 70%, and then closing, in the closing of, 5%, and then presentation 25%. How is it that technology will allow our distribution channels to turn that pyramid around? Well, that's a very good question. That's basically what I was trying to present here when talking about the tools that are possible or that can be used. In relation to market knowledge, the interview is very short if the agent does not have the ability to reach out to the client. So the question would be, what technology could the agent use to better reach the customer? I would say that the main one is a database of knowledge of the client and of the market that it is being targeted at. It is not that easy to create this network of information, and that's the difficulty that most agents find in order to create this opportunity. Let me bring up a very personal example that perhaps is not that connected to technology as technology in itself, but it has to do with other elements. When I wanted to increase my cover because I had more home loans, there were friends that could come and offer that product to me. But the question was which one to choose. Gradually, each one of these agents were automatically filtered. Each one of them showed interest for my need, and they went through different filters to the point that they became actually friends. So a tool is to build a knowledge base of the client. It may be a very trivial thing, like I'll be calling you up on your birthday. It may be just a superficial thing, or asking like, what's your pet's name, or what happened with this relative of yours that was in this condition. But building that database of knowledge and keeping it updated, it's really a very difficult activity. Not because of the tool itself, not because of the cost of acquiring or becoming affiliated, but because you have to maintain it. So I think that that's a very important tool. Okay, I think that there are no more questions, so we thank Ivan Vacacela leader of technology at INGLES Consulting, for his conference. And let's say goodbye to him with a big round of applause.